Well, good day, Kylie. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. Kylie, you are joining us today from Queensland. Is that correct? Where are you?
Yes, I'm in Noosa in Queensland, so it's meant to be the
Perfect.
Sunshine Coast, but it's pouring today.
Well, if there's any consolation here where I am today on a beautiful Human Rights Day in South Africa, it's nice and sunny, but winter is coming.
Oh, cool.
So it's absolutely fabulous to again have you join us for part 2 of our Crucial COVID conversations. And I think we were talking off camera just a little bit about how fitting today, because we want to touch on a few topics, but it actually really fits in beautifully on this wonderful Human Rights Day. And it's interesting because I'm doing a project and we were visiting a packing station the other day, and we had some of the people from welfare coming in talking about human rights, and it was actually so inspiring. And I think as human beings, we sometimes forget about not only our rights, but also with rights comes responsibility. And I think it's very easy for us to say, oh, well, I have a right about this, I have a right for this, I have a right about that. But we fail to remember that we need to be good citizens too, and we need to really take on that responsibility of preserving peace, equality, dignity, safety and protection for our women and children, etc. So I think it's a great time for us to talk about all of these things today.
It is perfect, really.
So for those of you that maybe missed our first Crucial COVID conversation with Kylie is not only an amazing friend and absolutely power woman that I have so much respect and care for, but she's also an international award-winning speaker and consultant in marketing, business, whether it's tourism or finance throughout Oceania. And as a marketing consultant, social media marketing guru, you do market research, beautiful blogging, content strategy, content marketing, and also real estate marketing, which is quite interesting. We haven't talked about that, so maybe one day I can unpack your brain a bit more.
Sure.
So the last time Kylie and I talked, it was such an interesting topic. We talked about diversity, inclusion, and two of the things that we've had absolute phenomenal feedback on. And perhaps we were saying something that we've missed so often in talking about what's happening in the world is those, and maybe you need to help me with the terminology because I'm not sure if the one that I'm going to put out there is the right thing. What were the two things we talked about?
Right.
You have your personal flair, but it's really those.
I think
go ahead.
I think a lot of it was really focused on the interracial relationship that I'm in. Like we have quite a blended family, and the it's a culturally and linguistically diverse background sort of thing that we have here, and blending that and like racism and the differences between different countries, particularly like my family has 5 cultures in it between our children and my partner and I. And we're kind of spread across 3 countries because his daughter is in the Solomon Islands. He's from Vanuatu, so the rest of the family's there. And then I'm from here. And my first 2 children are part Tongan, part Maori. So it's sort of like blending a whole lot of that. But we've, just the experiences around that and the different cultures and languages and trying to mix it all.
That's amazing. Yeah. And the reason why I wanted it to come from you is because you have the right to call it those interracial. I mean, I'm not sure if I have the right, sometimes you put something out there, but who are you to say that? I mean, well, people are so sensitive.
And it's different in different countries. Like it's different in Australia, what you can say versus like in Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands and that. It's just, I'm a white lady and he's a black man. And that's all there is to it. Whereas elsewhere, you can't really say that. Then I've got African-American friends who are like, yeah, you can totally say that. And I'm like, I'm not sure because I'm the white lady in this situation. And then others are like, it should be Caucasian and that sort of thing. And it's just like, I just go with what, pretty much what my family will say or the terms that they'll use. Like my the Vanuatu and Solomon Islander family, I go with that. I think that's easiest.
Well, to add another beautiful mix to this concoction of different countries, different experiences. Well, I'm in South Africa at the moment, so here, if we ever have to be careful, and we should be careful and respect different cultures and religions and different racial and backgrounds, you know, it's so important here. So here we have to be extra careful, as we should. And that, you know,
Absolutely.
so thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really important because we were going to, and we will focus a lot on the amazing, super inspiring work that Kylie has been doing during the COVID-19 crisis, specifically focusing on tips and resources and help for women and actually everybody across the world as it pertains to how do you manage your finance, where do you find money? I mean, you have the most amazing repertoire of you know, tips and resources.
I've done everything.
Exactly, and we want to tap into that because as owner of the Thrifty Issue, one of the sort of Australia's top finance sites sharing tips and resources. I mean, you have really been inspiring through the COVID crisis. So we wanted to focus on that. And we will, but I think because we're on topic right now, Kylie, maybe you and I can just touch a little bit on what we've been talking off camera about, and for the rest of our listeners, that this is maybe your first Crucial COVID conversation, or you've joined a few, but you didn't join the last one that we've had. For me, the Crucial COVID conversations really started off as finding positivity, inspiration, finding opportunity during a worldwide pandemic, and we're during a crisis where every single person in the world has been affected, whether it is financially, whether it's your health and mental wellness, whether it is your business, whether it's your personal health, or the people that you know, people that's near and dear to you that's been affected by COVID. It's touched on every single person's life. And I wanted to speak to inspiring people like Kylie, people that's really, you know, taking the crisis by the horns and riding through the storm, you know. So that's what I wanted to do. And I've always said the COVID-19 crisis has given us the opportunity to put some topics on the table that we didn't necessarily talk about before. And it's given us permission because it's okay. We see really goodwill and kindness, and we're all in this together. I'm talking about things like racism, conservation, climate change, diversity, inclusion, mental health and wellness, just those things that has always been kind of shifted to the back. And now we can talk about it. However, and this is the interesting thing, and I want to pick your brain on this, what we've talked about this morning, it's actually also given permission to people that are perhaps on very far on one side to now suddenly talk about, you know, their prejudices and their opinions in a very strong and perhaps not positive way. I mean, we see what's happening now in America, we see what's happening in various countries across the world, and suddenly people are given permission to share very racist and very one-sided opinions, and it's suddenly given them the right to do that. So I just wanted to put it on the table, and I wanted to see, you know, from your perspective, what you have experienced in Australia, and certainly we see it here in South Africa too. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting for us because we started the pandemic overseas, so in Vanuatu when it was just getting started, and then we went to the Solomons for child custody and that, and then got locked down on an outer island. But everybody in both countries was so accepting of our relationship and amazing and supportive, and I didn't feel the racism vibe as much there. And then when we got back to Australia, it was just an absolute shock, the difference. The stares, the comments, the getting confronted. Some of it comes from curiosity, but you can sort of tell when people are just curious about it or surprised about it. Like, we often get stopped because people want to look at our baby. There's not really any mixed couples here. We got excited the other day when my daughter got dropped off because her friend's father was from South Africa.
Oh, wow.
So they were a mixed race couple. We're like, oh my gosh, there's another one. Like, that's how rare it is. We've been here almost a year now, and that's how rare it is. And yeah, it's been quite extreme. But on top of that, you know, there's a very big divide with that sort of thing, and the way Justin gets treated. And even if he's out without me, there's a lot of stares like, you shouldn't be here, type treatment. And he's amazing about it, but I've seen it even when we've been together, sort of thing. So I can't imagine how difficult it is when we're not together, because I'm very clearly Australian, like you can hear from my voice, and from, I look very stereotypical Australian. But yeah, and then when we're together, you can see with the kids that we've obviously been together for a bit. But the other thing has been just the divide in Australia that I've seen in particular, and particularly where I live, of people not wanting other people to come here. So like we came over just before the property market got really bad here, basically. And so we secured a house, but now there's like thousands of people living in tents where we are, because they just can't get a rental. And a lot of people have come from the southern state, are moving up, but the attitudes are, if you didn't grow up here, get out. And when people ask for advice about moving up here, people are like, don't come here, Noosa is full, Sunshine Coast is full, get out, like all this sort of stuff. It should be for locals only. And it's just like, we're all from the same country. Sort of thing, like we're all living here. We've all been here during the pandemic, or we've been repatriated, or whatever it is.
Wow.
How can you have that attitude? And even I've noticed the attitude towards people from different backgrounds. So like, Asians and that sort of thing, who have been here for generations, but because they still look Asian, because they are, if they're from China or Korea or wherever, like their backgrounds are, but, they could be like the fourth or fifth person in their family born here. Sure. But the attitude is still like, get out, you're taking a space of a local. And it's like, they are a local, like they are, but a lot of those sort of attitudes have come out and almost become more acceptable in some ways. There's still a lot of people that are calling it out, but there are others that have these really extreme views that are banding together and are comfortable to do so now, because I don't know why they suddenly think it's okay. Like I would have thought in this day and age that is completely not okay.
Yep.
I've seen it quite extreme, but particularly for Justin.
Yeah, that is so interesting, and I think it's almost gone to the opposite of the intention of the crucial conversations. I was laying this out there saying, okay, I'm just going to close the window a little bit, for there's some beautiful sun coming in. So I was thinking that this is giving us the opportunity to actually talk about these things openly in the right capacity, and highlighting why we need to talk about these things and why these things should stop. And then the opposite is also true, because these topics are on the table, it's given people permission to not share because I want to understand, or share because, I want to get to a place where there is mutual respect and understanding, but share because I want to bring a very extreme view across, and this should become the norm. And there's a big difference. And I think it's evident everywhere in the world. I mean, it's here, it's where you are, it's in America, it is in so many different places and I think it's important that we talk about it and we speak out against it, because even here we have in South Africa we have a lot of people people that have relocated. Whether it's legal or not, that remains another story for another day. But people are here, and their businesses are being attacked, and because the country now is under a lot of pressure due to COVID, and we know that we have probably one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, that people are, and it's across Africa, so people are flocking here, people want opportunities, but the way people are treated, I mean, it certainly doesn't help in terms of finding peace and inclusion. So it's an interesting conundrum. So what do we do about it? I mean, what can we do, and what can the people do that's listening to help foster better understanding, and what do we do? How do we deal with it? If we walk past you in the street and we're curious, what do we do?
Well, I think for us, like, we can feel in the energy if it's curiosity or if it's malice. And I think that's the difference. So we're fairly open. We're like, our family's pretty content with, educating or answering questions and that sort of thing, if we feel that it's genuine openness and curiosity. It's when we can feel that it's quite negative that's where it's at. So I feel like most of the people listening here are probably going to be nice and curious about things, not malicious, But
because that's why they're tuning in, right? They want to learn.
Well, that's it. Like, I feel like everybody here is a really nice community. But I think the important thing to do is, if you see it, is to call it out.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
If you see it happening, that's probably what's more likely to happen, whether you see it on Facebook or whatever. But the way I sort of do it, or recommend doing it, is approaching it with love. So obviously there's some cases where you're just not going to be able to change somebody's mind or whatever, but there are ways you can discuss things or rebut things without being aggressive. And so the more gentle, softly but firm you are in your approach, and sort of, you know, I guess more loving and open about how you're talking, rather than "you're wrong," unless they're like blatantly really super extremist wrong, then go, you know, hell to leather for that one. But in general, I found, you know, the softer approach and being just open with information and allowing people to ask questions and that sort of thing has there's absolutely been circumstances where we've changed people's minds. And even with you know, like daughters at school, they've done a lot of educating with their peers, because they're the only ones that are you know, have their sort of background or have been to the islands or have left Queensland. There's actually a lot of kids that have never been outside the state at all. Yeah, which blew my kids' minds.
Are you serious? I mean, I'm even shocked a little bit to hear that. Wow.
We're in a small pocket that
wow.
People travel here rather than people leaving here. It's quite an ideal location. And so, yeah, there's a lot of kids here that haven't even left Queensland. My girls are the only ones out of their friends that have left the country. So they sort of became the experts. And then, of course, because they have the islander background, they can speak up about stuff. But they've had to be quite forward about it in some circumstances, particularly at school, and just go, that sort of behaviour is not on, and this is why. And yeah, sort of, it's sad that at times we've had to point out that the other person is a human. Like, just because they have a different skin colour or a different look, it's like, you know, do you realise that what you're saying, you're treating them as if they're not even a human being?
Wow.
And yeah, sometimes just saying that has been enough for somebody to sort of stop a little and just go, think about what you said, and if that was said to you, how you would be feeling right now. And it's that simple. And because that's how we were raised, was, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, like the golden rule. And that's what I've taught my daughters, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's interesting how many people will walk past, but once one person stands up, other people will stand up. Like I remember one time I was in Melbourne, and there was a girl on the ground absolutely in tears, and this guy was leaning over her and just abusing her and spat on her. That I saw as I was coming down the street, and I ran over, and I'm like, no, that is not on, you get away. Like, I got no idea what was happening. And this is right in the middle of the city. So there are people walking everywhere, heaps of big men, but nobody stepped in. And then I'm like, nope, that's not okay. And she was like full shaking, and she had a friend there, but he wasn't able to do much. Like there was a whole group of teenagers. There was one guy leaning right over her, but there was a group of teenagers behind them, really backing them up. And I stepped in, and I'm like, no, this is not on, and put myself between them, and like, you know. And then once other people saw that another adult had gotten involved, then a couple of people stopped, and it was like, oh, do you know, like, what can we do, or do you want some help or whatever? And it was just like, you saw what you could do. Step in and stop it. Like, it's that simple. There is a guy there abusing a woman. Step in and stop it. It's that simple. Like, it shouldn't have taken me, like the much smaller blonde lady, to jump in to stop it. Like, yeah, because I think it helped too that on that day I actually had a leather jacket and jeans on, which normally in a dress, like stuff like this. But that day I jumped in, and I'm like, don't. And my hair was pulled back, and there was like no makeup, and I have an actually rather red face, as Belinda has seen. In the islands, I can't cover it up because you sweat too much. But yeah, and so I'm, you know, like this mad red face, and like, no, you back off. I think may have helped a lot more than if I rocked up in this is a dress that only comes to my knees and sort of flares out, and then it's like, no, please don't hurt them. I don't think would have been as effective as what I was wearing. But just the fact that, you know, stepping in, only obviously if you feel like it's not safe to do so, don't, but you try and get somebody else involved. Like, you know, seek help, is because that person is like, whatever's happening generally, you know, it's triggering. So you know, if you're somebody who's experienced a lot of trauma, which a lot of people who are facing racism have faced this sort of stuff their whole life, and so it can be triggering, and you shut down, and they can't look to see where to get help. They can't it's just what trauma does to the brain. It just, you know, like locks it down, sort of thing. And so to have somebody else jump in and go, no, that's not on, or back off, or, you know, how dare you say that, that's not okay.
Yep.
And that sort of like that I think is just, speaking up when it happens. Like my daughters have done it at school. Like they're like in primary school, they've stood up to people that have been racist, and like, if they can do it, anybody should be able to step in and go, no.
Yep.
So I think those are the biggest things. And to be understanding, and also like be open about the conversation. So if somebody says, actually, I don't like being called, you know, whatever the term is, then listen to them. Even, what is it? BIPOC. So
BIPOC communities. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually had some of my friends say to me, no, just call me Black.
Yeah.
I've gone, okay.
Exactly.
They're like, I don't want to be associated with that. I'm like, okay. So respect what the individual says and what they want to be called. And that goes for everything, like race, gender, like all of it. Obviously that should go without saying, is, you know, respect what other people want to be called, how they want to be treated, and do it. And it's that simple. And, you know, if you're in other circumstances where, you know, say friends are talking about another friend or whatever, and they use the wrong terminology or whatever, like correct them. Sort of thing. Or if they start talking bad or negative, or like correct them, sort of thing. Like I think a lot of people don't even correct within their own social circles. And if you're actually friends, they'll be okay with it.
Yep.
And if they're not friends, do you really want friends like that? Like that, because they're going to be doing it behind your back too. So, you know, but I think that
absolutely
those
awesome.
things.
Yeah, I mean, great pearl of wisdom. Yeah, sorry, go on. Don't let me don't.
No, you're right.
You're on a roll. I mean, this is great.
I think those are the things, but I think a lot of it actually starts within our friends and family circles, is where we can have like the biggest impact. And but I think those are also the circles that we're most afraid to make a ripple by speaking up, by going, you know, actually they don't like to be called that, or actually, you know, this is the correct terminology, and that sort of thing. And there's been quite a few times where I've had to step in and go, no, not so much with family or whatever, more acquaintances, I would say, is more where I've had to do it. I think because I have quite a mixed family. Like there's Croatian, Austrian, Scottish, like there's, you know, a bunch, and then obviously Polynesian and Melanesian and that sort of thing. So not so much there, but definitely on our wider circles, I've had to step in and go, actually the correct term is, or, you know, that's not how they've asked to be talked about. Because the same thing happens with my because my eldest daughter has autism. And so we've sort of experienced in regards to disability, racism, like everything, our family just likes to, you know, take a piece of it.
Push the limits.
Basically.
Yeah, great. Exactly. Example. You're the best person to talk about this. That's awesome.
Thank you. But I think those are the main things.
Yeah, that is, wow. Okay, so first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think it's great to hear that side. And I think because we don't often talk about it, and we don't often put it on the table like this. It's great. So a couple of observations, Kylie, from what you have said. I think first of all, it comes down to that love and kindness and communication. If we just go back to the basics, we are all on this beautiful Human Rights Day. We are all human. And once we go back and we start talking from a position of wanting to understand, it's about communication. It's communication 101. Okay, what do you go into this conversation with? Is it animosity? Is it anger? Is it hatred? Or do you go in to understand? And if you go in to understand, you have already won the battle. Whatever will be discussed, it will be okay, because you are there for understanding. That's right. It's that energy. You know.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Exactly. And then the other thing that you brought up that I think we need to just maybe touch on, it's absolutely phenomenal to hear your kids stand up. And if kids can stand up, and actually probably it's a double-edged sword, because for these youngsters having to, I mean, it's great that they have that and you've really empowered them, but it's actually quite sad in the other way as well, that they have had to face these things so young in their life and now become. They
actually mentioned last week,
you know, go ahead.
Well, they mentioned last week how exhausting it has been. They said that they're really grateful that they have the confidence to do it, and that they have the knowledge to do it, and that they know that Justin and I will back them up no matter what. But they said it's exhausting educating everybody. They said, or you know, having to point out the differences or correcting people, and it's not coming from a malicious place or anything. And you know, their friends are quite open to them, saying, actually, you know, this is how it is or whatever, and that sort of thing, and open about talking about their experiences. But they're just like, here in Australia, they said it's every day.
Oh my
Whereas in the
goodness.
islands, we're just accepted.
Yeah,
Whereas
it's actually,
here we have to
Kylie, it's
explain.
quite sad, isn't it, that we
Yeah.
rely then on our kids and on the little ones to be able to bring these messages across, because the system doesn't support that type of education. I mean, why is that not touched on in the schools? Why do we not
It
put
is at the schools here now.
well,
my kids
exactly.
make sure it was. But the fact that they had to do that to force like extra training, and there was extra training done with staff, and each classroom had to do more things on racism and inclusion and all that sort of stuff, because of a few incidences last year that my daughter just went, nope, that's not on.
That's not on.
And she was 11.
It's not. Yeah, it's so interesting. It shouldn't just happen in our organizations and in our political affiliations. It should happen in our schools as well, where there are support and structures. There are inbuilt structures that addresses these things, and it doesn't come back to individuals, and certainly not to kids to have to actually deal with this. But again, kudos for your kids and for you as a family that you have empowered them to be able to, and not just empowering them, but also backing them up, that you know that they know that you are there for them. But then the other thing is, which is also quite interesting, and something that I've had to relearn again. And this is the thing, I mean, you got to be open and you got to be respectful for where you are. And by this, I mean, in which country, and people like us that's traveled extensively across the world, and, we go back and forth, you got to be sensitive to the situation in that country. I mean,
absolutely.
It's interesting because you talked about the BIPOC communities and using that terminology. For me as well, I did not use it. I didn't feel comfortable with it until coming to South Africa. And here it's very common. As a matter of fact, here, it is actually what a lot of people prefer to be called if they are, if they're not Caucasian. Yeah. And I had to can I say that? Is it okay? And you're right.
And you have to learn it for wherever you are.
Exactly. And that becomes your responsibility as an individual. Don't go in arrogant or ignorant. It's your responsibility. Be cautious and find out where you are and learn and ask questions. Don't be ignorant, because ignorance is your responsibility. If you don't ask the right questions or you don't respect people, it's up to you, and you have to change that mindset. Nobody can do it for you. And if you don't want to, if you don't feel like it, shame on you. I'm sorry, but you have to be respectful for the communities and the cultures that you're interacting within.
Absolutely. Well, that was one of the concerns that, for both our families, was the different cultures, and that we wouldn't understand each other's culture. And I hadn't really had anything to do with Justin's culture prior to, dating him and stuff. And his family have been amazing. They've also been quite surprised with the amount of questions I've asked. And, what about this? And is there any traditions, like even with childbirth, I was like, is there anything I need to do? Like, culturally, is there any traditions I need to do or beautiful or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. And I've tried to every step of the way be really conscious of, their traditions and values. They're Seventh-day Adventists as well. So a lot of the further back traditional customs in Vanuatu, they don't particularly do. But there are some, like when we were in Vanuatu last time, Justin came up and he handed me a drink, and I've gone, what is it? And he's like, just drink it. And I'm like, no, what is it? And he's like, just drink it. I'm going, fine. And so I drank it, and it was a protection drink that his father had collected like the grasses for it or whatever, and boiled it up, and like to drink the drink sort of thing. And and that's pretty much what I do, is I just ask, what would you like? And what terms. So for example, his parents, I said, what am I supposed to call you? Because I feel uncomfortable calling you by your first names, because I've seen over there that that's not what's done, and things like that. And it's a really open relationship. I can ask anything in that regards, and they can obviously ask anything regarding over here and that sort of thing. But that's awesome. I knew going into an interracial relationship such as this one, even though my first marriage was interracial as well, he was raised in Sydney and raised very Caucasian. He didn't speak either Maori or Tongan. There wasn't, as many of those things to consider. But I mean, Justin grew up in Vanuatu and then lived in the Solomons, and his daughter, being Solomon Islander, had to do the same thing regarding that. Is like, what do we need to know about that? Making sure my daughters are aware too. And when we traveled around, like, what do we need to be conscious of? How should we dress? What do we speak? What terms do we say? All that sort of stuff. And it's really easy to just be open and just listen and then just do what they say. we've had some interesting discussions on things such as bride price and other ones that I've struggled with coming from my background. But then when he's explained it from his perspective, I've gone, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Like in Vanuatu, bride price, for example, is, for those that don't know, it's an amount paid to the bride's family. But it's paid as a thank you for raising her and taking care of her. And, you know, it's not paid in terms of I'm
buying you. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I think from Caucasian culture often sees those sorts of customs as, you know, ownership type things.
Degrading
and
or whatever.
It can be viewed that way. Yeah. And it can be viewed that way sometimes by some people in those cultures as well. But the general idea is, you know, it's a thank you gift sort of thing. Yeah. But then my parents, of course, being Caucasian and from a wealthier country, were like, no. So like there's been interesting discussions around that sort of stuff, because that also brings into play, you know, like wealth and the differences in wealth between our countries. And, you know, we've got between in our family, because we're mainly Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and here, you've got least developed, developing, and then, you know, Australia, which is one of the most developed.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, we've got all this opportunity over here that they don't have. And then things like with COVID, we got payments from our government to, you know, to help us and that sort of thing. Whereas that didn't really happen in the Solomons and Vanuatu. And, you know, and then the cultural expectations too of like, you know, you'll support the family because you're better off over here and things like that. It's a lot to mix and to blend and to understand. And it's definitely not something that you should go in close-minded with.
That's right.
I think, even like if you're visiting a particular area, those are things that you need to be aware of, because Caucasian culture doesn't view some of these things kindly, like, you know, particularly like sending the money to your family or supporting your elders or any of that sort of stuff. It's just like, it's my money, I should do what I want with it. And it's like, but you're probably going to get an inheritance. It's the other way around in the islands. Like,
that's right.
I mean, you'll inherit land and that sort of thing, but, you know, there's a big mix with helping raising each other's children. And, you know, like Justin's parents, for example, have supported numerous cousins through school because they live in Port Vila, whereas a lot of them are in the outer islands. And, you know, they don't have the retirement plans that we have in Australia and America. And,
that's right.
And that sort of thing. And so it's like taking all of those sorts of things into account. And I feel like I'm on a tangent here, but
no, but it's so interesting. And I mean, we are sharing and you're communicating and we are learning. I mean, even I have lived and breathed, and I'm learning from your perspective, which is just exactly what it's all about. It's creating understanding and fostering understanding and helping us understand why we need to understand and why we need to be, you know, why we need to ask questions and listen.
Yeah, you know? That's it. Listen to the answers. Absolutely. Sort of thing.
And also ask the questions
and take it on board. Yeah,
that's right. Like, exactly. And that leads us, I mean, I know we can go on again for a long time about it.
I think we can for any topic, but that's us.
That's just us. But that leads us beautifully talking about the, you know, least developing country, developing and et cetera, and bringing the whole financial aspect into play. And your personal journey has been super inspiring. And we actually haven't touched on that, but I just want to highlight it. I mean, you have been the recipient of all the good and probably the bad that COVID has given us, in terms of you were stuck with kids and your partner in countries that you were basically in lockdown and you didn't expect that, and you had to just make things work. And I could imagine financially it must have been such a huge challenge. And again, because the culture there is different, you were probably receiving, you never had to worry about food and things like that, but still it was hard financially. And here you were still focusing on sharing those beautiful learnings and tips in terms of financial independence, especially for women, through the thrifty issue. So tell me, with your financial hat on, how difficult has it been? And, you know, what have you done? And then we'll get to tips and stuff like that. But what have you done during COVID?
Sure.
Financially safe.
I've done a bit of everything. Well, at the start, I was doing a bit more travel writing, and, you know, we were overseas and I was doing a bit of that. And then actually when we were in Vanuatu with Justin's family, my websites got hacked, and the travel writing kind of, you know, all got paused because of what was happening in the world, and they weren't sure what was going to go on in that. And I actually only earned $1,000 in March last year, like 1,000 Australian, which is significantly less when I'd been making 20,000 some months prior to that. And so that was like, we actually relied completely on his parents that month.
That's right.
I was in another country and I've just gone, oh my gosh, I'm the one from Australia who's supposed to be on mad income. Like I'm supposed to be doing all of this sort of stuff. I was like, how am I supposed to turn around now to my, my partner's family and go, we need help, because like I'd just paid out a bunch of money for some other stuff. And so my savings were pretty depleted. And because my child custody only just finished the year before, that took 7.5 years. Sure. And so I was not in a position where I had a lot, and I was kind of relying on what was coming in month to month whilst I was still budgeting and all that sort of stuff. And so, we were suddenly in a position where we were reliant on his family, which for him probably wasn't such a big deal because that's fairly normal in the culture. For me, it was just like, oh my gosh, I've never been in this position. Like,
I can identify. I know.
So that was really hard. And then we knew we were going from there to the Solomon Islands, and in my head, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I know there it's more expensive for accommodation and all this sort of stuff. But I was able to, thankfully, at his parents' house, because they're amazing. His dad just went out every day and bought the food at the markets, and I hit the jackpot with his family. Like, they are so amazing. I am like so lucky. And then we went over to the Solomons, and fortunately, like, things with my business were sorted. But we got locked down. I relied on, thankfully, obviously Justin has friends there because like he lived there for years and worked there for years, and I'm friends with quite a few of his friends already because I'd been numerous times, so they helped out. His ex-wife gave us some advice because she was in Malata, and that's where we were going to be, so she gave us a lot of advice there, which was really, really helpful. And she's actually even now been helping. We're applying for permanent residency for Justin here. Excellent. Otherwise, in next month he would have to return to Vanuatu, and we wouldn't know when he'd be able to get back. And so we had to organize a police clearance, but you can't do that unless somebody pays for it in Honiara, like at the police station.
That's right. I know.
Excuse, can you please take time out of your day and go stand in a line for ages and do this for us, and then can you please get the birth certificate? Can you please do, like, we've been asking her for a lot at the moment, but she's been really, really good about it. So we had sort of all that, but when we got locked down, when we were in Malata and then coming back to Honiara, I tapped into the expat community, and thankfully there was a house for us that we could go into at half the normal rent, because expat homes are expensive.
Very expensive.
That being Honiara, you kind of need the extra security. People would be shocked. I was shocked, like really, really shocked. And then also the price of foods and that sort of thing. So we just ate local. Oh yeah, it was, but it's good. And like, so we ate locals to sort of deal with a lot of that. I always had to make sure that we had cash on us because the ATMs weren't always working, and those sorts of things. And then when we got repatriated, we had to stay in an Airbnb for a while. And this sounds bad, but fortunately, because of COVID, it was less than half the price it was normally. I think it was about a quarter of the price that it would be normally. So we stayed there, and then we managed to secure a place. And at first we sort of just furnished it for free for what we could sort of source. And then later we got a car and all those sorts of things. So it's been slowly. But one thing that really stood out to me was because for me, it was like, well, it's fine once we're back in Australia, like there's all these payments from the government. It's not a problem. It was a little more difficult in the islands because I wasn't eligible for some of it over there. I had to be living in Australia. But once we got back, it was like easy as. And it just blew Justin's mind because he's just like, that's not an option. And then even just recently, so like I knew we'd be okay. Once we got back here, I'm like, finances aren't going to be a problem, and we'll budget, and I'll be able to focus more on business because the internet's more reliable. And it was like, I've increased business again, so that hasn't been a problem. But when we were talking about the permanent residency, so as it was getting closer and we were trying to work out, do we all go to Vanuatu? Do we stay here? What do we do? Because he can't stay in the country, and the government like sent us a letter going, he's not allowed to stay, like 30th of April, get out. And so we're like, what do we do? And then permanent residency is an option, which is $7,700 to apply in Australia, plus your like police clearances, and you've got to pay for a health check, and the lawyer is about $3,500 to help you prep and all this sort of stuff. And he's just gone, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And in my head, as soon as I heard the figures, I was like, ask mum and dad. Like that's not a problem. I would just turn around to my parents and they would deposit the money in my account and I'll repay them, sort of thing. And I blurted that out, and then I've just gone, oh my gosh, that wouldn't be an option for you. Your parents would not meaning it nasty or anything like that. Like his parents have rental properties and they support lots of people and all that sort of stuff. But it was just like, that would be a huge amount of money to find, when that's more than an annual wage for some people over there.
Right, absolutely.
We had to find for the,
for sure.
the thing. And I've just gone, and I felt so bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I said, like, I hadn't realized how many times a lot of the things in our relationship like this have popped up, and I've just gone, it'll be fine, because I know the government will cover this, or I know I can ask my parents, or like there was even one week where I was some invoices hadn't been paid or something, and so there was this like slight crossover. There was like, I was $100 short or something, and I messaged my sister, and I'm like, I have $100, I'll pay you back next week. And it's like, it's in my account straight away, because like the payments are done straight away and stuff like that. And then like they do the same to me. They'll, you know, can I borrow a couple hundred? Yep, here you go. Like, it's not an issue, because we also all don't like to take out of our savings or investments and shares and stuff.
Right,
like that.
exactly.
So like, we would rather flick money between each other like that than, you know, not get interest or whatever. But which is, again, is a really privileged position to be in. It is a
privileged position.
All these things that I hadn't considered until like I'd blurt out something like that, and then see his face, and then just go, oh my gosh, it was never an option. And you know, like and things for him too, because he's not allowed to work in Australia. So making the decision to repatriate meant that he could not work, sort of thing, which for a man, difficult, and particularly from his culture, like the man is supposed to provide, the man's supposed to do everything, and that sort of thing. But on top of that, like his father's one who does the cooking, the cleaning, and helps with the children. Like he takes care of the grandkids and everything. And he still drives a bus around Vanuatu, and like his parents have an amazing dynamic. And so Justin has been raised in that sort of environment where they can do everything. It's not just left to the women. But the man is supposed to provide. Was very strongly instilled. So there's been that element as well. So then, for me to just be like, oh, it's fine, I can just do this, or oh, I can just do that, or whatever. It's there's had to be a lot of communication around it, because and differences in our culture
and sensitivity towards it, because you don't know what you don't know, and suddenly it's here, and now you have to really unpack and understand and work with it, right? And make sure that you are more sensitive towards it, or at least put it on the table before. That is so interesting. And I mean, I love your angle on that as well. So Kylie, what tips do you share with your wonderful group of Australian mums and with the rest of the world? What tips do you share about how do you make money during this COVID-19 crisis? And what are the things that people can do across the world to just tap into some other resources? You know, how do we hustle? What do we do?
It's amazing that there are actually so many options now. Like, look, when my mum was raising us and she wanted to make money, but there wasn't a lot of options, whereas now, because there's so many things online, there are a lot of remote jobs just to start with. But you know, there's things like online surveys, there's market research pays like 100 Australian to 150 Australian an hour for those sorts of things. There's like mystery shopping, there's freelance writing, there's virtual assistant work. So if you've got any sort of admin experience, then there is a huge need for that now. That's increased a lot during COVID.
Oh, wow.
Because so many businesses have gone remote. A lot of businesses are seeking to, you know, outsource a lot of those sorts of things. And a lot of businesses have also realized that they don't actually need people in the office for things. And so the demand for those sort of remote admin services increased. And there's been more people looking at trying their own business. And once they get to a certain point, they need somebody else to manage their email and that sort of stuff.
That's so interesting. Like, it's true, hey?
And then for like here in Australia too, as we're sort of, we don't have a lot of issues with COVID here in Australia, the demand for services such as babysitting or nannying or yard work or you know, cleaning the house and all of that, that's increased again. So those sorts of things have been quite beneficial.
And that is because some of the foreign workers can't get in, so people are I mean, literally the country's closed. So that's interesting. I never thought of it like that.
Because a lot of people relied on like nannies coming in from overseas. That was a big one. Or students that were studying English here would be like nannies in the afternoon. Those sorts of things. There's massive demand for hospitality in our area as well. So like which obviously all shut down during COVID and people lost their jobs and everything, but now they can't get enough because Australians are traveling again.
Exactly. And they're traveling inside the country, which is great, isn't it? Yeah.
That's it, because we can't leave. Well,
you can't go to Sullivan's. No, I know. I know.
It's so hard not being able to go over there. That's probably been the hardest, is not being able to see the family. But like all those sorts of things. Then I've got one of my sisters has just published a book on Amazon, like Ebooks is one that I've seen a lot of people doing. My daughter illustrated a book. So it's like illustration, graphics, all those sorts of things. Like there's so much that can be done online. My main income came from the thrifty issue. So I do like blogging, and you get money from like ads and affiliate income and that sort of thing. But I'm also really, really specific about who I will and won't allow to advertise on my site, because it has to be a company that I've dealt with, so that I can verify them and say that, yes, actually these guys are good, or whatever. I won't just, do anything. I mean, if I put anything up, I'd have loads of payday loan and gambling links, because they're all wanting to get in on everyone. I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's not quite your angle.
No, exactly. I'm like, I want to save people money, not cost them. So I share a lot of that sort of stuff, but everything that I share, particularly in terms of the making money, have been things that I've done myself. Awesome. And so I've tried it all, like even medical trials. I did that a few years back. And actually, as soon as I got back to Australia, like within a few months, and the media knew I was back, they were talking about medical trials, and they're like, can you be on the news for it? I'm like, sure, but I haven't done it for a while. Like I did that one because I had that condition, like that was different. But like, those sorts of things that people are always curious about, and sort of, that sort of thing's scary. I've written about, and it's like, this is what I did. These are my tips. This is what to look out for, all that sort of stuff, from, everything from cashing in cans, through to like medical trials, through to, starting a business, or like I've outlined how you can do it in Australia for under $100.
Amazing.
Those sorts of things. But I do test everything. So
tried and tested by Kylie. Got the rubber stamp of approval.
That's it. My parents are like, we don't understand you. You're just so random with everything you do. Go get a government job. And I'm like, no,
it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work for you. So what do
anybody that knows me was like,
no, it's not going to work. So what do you see financially happening for this year? What are the things that you want us to keep in mind? Because we all, first of all, we never saw this coming. We should have, but we didn't.
No.
Then it came, and then we never saw it lasting so bloody long, and it's still going on, and we're going to see this for another. I mean, this year is still going to be, in so many cases, a complete unexpected, I was going to say a write-off, but that sounds terribly negative, and I didn't mean it in that negative way. I meant it would still be part of the COVID pause. It's starting to happen.
We're not going to go straight back to normal life straight away, or what we viewed as normal life.
And it will never be normal again. I think it will be completely different, which could be exciting. But that being said, what do you see? What can we do during this year as human beings on this amazing human rights day? What can we do to, first of all, look after our financial health and well-being, but also just being better humans? I mean, what are the tips that you have for us for this year in closing, Kylie?
Sure. Well, what we're doing as our family is sort of working on ourselves first. So our family motto, as I said, is approach everything with love. And so trying to have a lot more loving, understanding view of everything, understanding how it is in other countries, getting our own finances in order. So clearing any debt that we have, making sure everything is, clean and healthy, looking at switching some of our purchasing to either more local or ethically sourced options.
That's nice.
Like with clothing, with food, things that are more sustainable, and supporting either local, or I also like to support more disadvantaged areas. Still continuing with giving. I think that's one area that some people have sort of eased off on in terms of donating cash or time or anything like that. Like I love what you're doing, for example, with Dive Munda and training the youth and sponsoring the youth, like things like that. I think looking for things that are different to what we previously probably all donated. Like one of the ones that I've done regularly has been Kiva loans, because they're like small business loans, and they just started in Vanuatu. So I was like, I can support businesses there.
Excellent.
Those sorts of things, like the Vanuatu Feminist Library, like I think that if we really focus particularly on female focused things, because more women have lost their jobs during COVID than other women. A lot of women have been forced into the home to have to juggle, homeschooling, business, finding a different income, doing all the house stuff, being locked down 24/7, that sort of thing. Like the mental health is suffering. And so those sorts of things. So I think ensuring that, you're still getting exercise, you're still eating healthy, you are communicating well within your family, making sure that you have date nights. Because I think a lot of the things that filter out into the community actually come from within your home. And I see that with my own family because of how we approach things within our home. It affects how my kids and my partner and I all are out in the community, and looking at those sorts of things. And then as things start to open up, I would strongly say travel when it's safe to do so, which might not be for another 12 months, like Australia may be locked down or whatever, but like we're keen to head back to the islands because those countries especially have suffered drastically, like, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, probably millions, lost their jobs in the islands because they rely on tourism. And I mean, that sort of thing. So like we're looking at that. So looking towards the future. Also, I think being aware that most pandemics last a few years. Historically, they've lasted a few years. So even like the vaccinations are being rolled out, and that probably prepare yourself that you're looking at another 1 to 2 years of it still being you know, not what went, and that it won't go back to what it was before. But yeah, making sure that you're taking care of yourself and your family, and being a ripple effect in the areas around you. Those are the sort of things. And looking like, I mean, as like obviously I own the Thrifty Show, and looking at the things on there for like the ways to make and save money, and choosing one and applying it rather than trying to overhaul your whole life at once. Just do one thing. Like making one change will enable you to make more changes in the future, but just making one change and committing to it and being you know, good about it, that alone will make a difference. Whereas I think too often we look at everything and it's too much and then don't do anything. So
Exactly. I mean, that's so good. I think it was the Carnegie guy that said, I mean, you should make a list of 20 things, and then 20 really important things that you want to do, and then pick the top 5 and throw away the list, because you'll never get to the other 15. And I was saying to a very good friend of mine the other day, I mean, I did it and it worked for me, and I actually just picked 3 things. And the only thing that I'm focusing on right now is those 3 things, because logistically, where I am with all the lockdowns and whatever is happening around me right now, I can't. I mean, you still have to make money, you still have to focus on things that's important, but you can't do everything. And I think that's so important, because people now suddenly use this time during lockdown. I mean, if we look at Europe's locked down again, you know, if we look what's happening in the rest of the world, I mean, you have to, first of all, like you said, look after your family first, look after you first. You mean, you can't pour from an empty cup, so you have to look after yourself. And if you don't do that, you can't be good for anybody else. And you can't do 20 things right now. It's great to say, oh, I'm going to do this during lockdown, I'm going to do this. Just pick 1 or 2 things and just focus on that and do that really well, because otherwise you're going to start being in a position of burnout. You're going to have serious mental health and wellness issues, and those are not going to go away on the other side of COVID, you know. So it's really important.
No, that's it. Those are long-term impacts.
Exactly.
Yeah. And like in our family, we try and make sure that we have regular check-ins. So, you know, or if one of us needs space, we know that, like, you know, Justin will, if he wants space, he'll just say so, and he can go hang out in the backyard or whatever. If either of the girls need space because they share a room, they'll tell each other, and the other one will leave the room so that one can have the room. We do like a weekly abundance meeting, we call it, where we check in with our budget and discuss it all and go over it. And I think that was a bit of an adjustment for Justin at first, because obviously I'm the main income earner at the moment. And so to sort of sit down and go, how are we spending all our money?
That's new, right? I mean, that's a different way, different focus, because it's a very secret, a very cultures that's kept very close to sometimes the man's chest, you know, that we don't know women, and everybody else doesn't know what's going on. So I love that.
That's it. So we're pretty open about that. And two, because like we are sending money back to his daughter in the islands, and we send money to his family every month, because like that's culturally what you do, which he was shocked and his family was shocked that I was like, yeah, of course you do that. Like, you know, but like those sorts of things, like having regular check-ins. I have regular one-on-one times with my girls and those sorts of things. So like you have to do that stuff to make sure you're okay, but like you absolutely have to take care of yourself first.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Otherwise it just all falls to pieces. And mental health issues can take years, or sometimes you never get over it. Like
that's right. Ever. Sometimes you and very often you learn to cope and live with it, but it doesn't go away. And that's another topic for another day. All right, lovely, Kylie. I think we're wrapping up. I want to know, how do people find you, and where can we find the Thrifty Issue? Where can we hear about these wonderful stuff that you guys are doing? How do we contribute? How do we get involved?
Well, the website is thethriftyissue.com.au. The Thrifty Issue on any social media, or otherwise, if you look up my name, Kylie Travers, on any social media as well, I've got a separate website, which is kylietravers.com.au. But in the future, what we're setting up and we'll be doing, it's called Blended Nomads. And that's
just the big announcement? This is where we're announcing it first.
Yes, it is. So it's not even fully set up. It's this is the first place I've sort of mentioned it, but
thank you for sharing
it's where we're going to be. Well, thank you. We'll be sharing a lot more about sort of our life, a lot more on the interracial aspect. Obviously we love travel and experience, so we'll be doing that as well. But yeah, Justin's going to be involved with that, so it won't just be me talking and doing everything. Justin will be, and sharing his perspective, and my daughters will be sharing their perspectives, and things regarding cultural and linguistic diversity and blending the cultures and relationships, and so all the sort of stuff that we've talked about, that's where all of that's going to be. But yeah, it's brand new, but I'm aiming to have it finished soon. But yeah, this is the first place I've sort of talked about it. So
oh my goodness, I'm going to be the first that's amazing. I absolutely love what you guys do. I love what you stand for. You are such an inspiration. Keep on doing this amazing work that you do, and I can't wait to see you again. Hopefully it will be soon. We'll see.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kylie. Thanks for joining my Crucial COVID Conversations.
Thank you.